So do you know what the most popular Christmas wine is, Matthew?
No idea.
I hate Brussels sprouts. Christmas dad joke. So,
well, hello and welcome to Rock Paper Swords. I'm going to start again.
Hysterical.
Hysterical. Welcome and hello to Rock Paper Swords, the hysterical action and adventure podcast. My name is Matthew Harvey.
And my name is Stephen A. Mackay.
We are both best-selling historical fiction authors, and together we chat about all things historical, sometimes hysterical, and anything that could fall under the banner of action and adventure in books, film, TV, and games.
Ho, ho, ho. And we also talk about rock music from time to time. Do you have your decorations up yet, Matthew? We have, and it's only November, but that was my wife. She wanted everything up early.
Well, no, we always wait. I make the family wait until December. But basically on the 1st of December, I think it was the 2nd this year, the tree is up, the decorations are up. It's the tradition. I don't really get involved in putting the decorations up very much.
I leave it to the wife. That's what I do.
And my wife's been sort of running around going, oh, we haven't got everything ready. Because we've got family coming around at Christmas, as is the norm. And it's like, we haven't got all the presents, we haven't got the food, we don't know what we're doing. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever, it'll be fine. And every now and again, I sort of go onto Amazon and just order a few more presents.
Buy something else.
Yeah,
I've got an Amazon delivery due while we're recording this, so
okay.
You'll probably hear the dog barking as usual.
Well, as we're saying, the festive season is upon us. It is a time of mistletoe and mulled wine, turkey and crackers. But where did all these traditions come from, I hear you ask? And how have people throughout history celebrated this season, the darkest part of the year in the Northern Hemisphere where we are? Well, I thought that today, as well as talking about music and other things to do with Christmas and decorations and stuff, we can talk about some of the history around the festival. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
So, do you know of the most ancient festival around Christmas?
Ancient? Are you talking about Saturnalia?
Yeah, probably. And maybe, I suppose, but maybe even more ancient than that, something that's happened every year at the same time before Christ, definitely before the Romans, before anybody.
The solstices.
The solstice, yeah. So we presume
spring, autumn, winter.
Yeah. So the midwinter solstice, of course, is on the 21st of December, and we know that Stonehenge, for example, lines up with the midwinter solstice and also the summer solstice.
Yeah, a lot of these old monuments do.
Yeah, so so I was reading a little bit about Stonehenge earlier, and of course Stonehenge is 5,000-6,000 years old, so it's very old.
Yeah, at
least, yeah. And its tallest stone lines up with sunrise on the solstice. And archaeologists working nearby in Durrington Walls have discovered that the Neolithic people there had great feasts at around this time of year. I don't know how they know it's at this time of year, because that's some very pinpoint accuracy in archaeology.
They've maybe found certain, it wouldn't be berries. There'll be some.
Could be seeds.
Could it be feces? How could feces wouldn't last that long then, would it?
Oh, you can get stone feces, can't you? You can get what they call coprolites.
Oh, right. Well, maybe they found them, so they'll have something in them that maybe only grows in the winter.
Could be
flowers.
Could be.
Yeah, there must be something like that.
But anyway, I was impressed by that, but I didn't investigate.
Maybe there's a Christmas decoration in amongst
that's more likely. Yeah. They just found like one of those glass baubles that always break. Well, you don't get them very much nowadays. The glass.
That's
ones.
why.
Do you remember? As I don't know about in your family, but I remember as a kid My grandmother had like basically all of her decorations were like the proper traditional glass baubles and stuff. And I remember them every now and again, one would get knocked off of the tree and smash, and it would all be, they must have cost a fortune back in the day, but now most things are not as fragile. But yes, they probably found one of these baubles or a little
or something from an advent calendar mixed in amongst it.
Maybe they found one of those nail clippers from a cracker.
A terrible joke.
A really bad joke written on a tiny stone tablet.
A tiny tablet. So they know that it must have came from a Neolithic Christmas cracker. So that's how they know that the feast was held at this time of year.
Well, that makes perfect sense. I don't know why I didn't think of that. So, well, apparently, although going back into the feces idea, whatever they found, they did find that they ate huge quantities of pork and beef. Some of it, though, from animals which had been driven hundreds of miles. So
how did they know that?
Well, so I'm assuming that this is because they've done something like the dental, the isotopes in the teeth can say where things were brought up, because there's
grasses or what they were eating.
It's from the water, so you get isotopes from the water, and it's the same with humans, so they can see whether they were born in Scotland or Wales or wherever because of that. So I'm assuming it's something like that with animals as well, but who knows? Maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something funny around the sheep or the pigs or whatever. The pigs or the
I'm not sure how this fits in with the theory that aliens built Stonehenge.
Well, I mean, I suppose aliens could have
celebrated Christmas.
They could have started Christmas, and they could have also created the pork and the beef. Maybe they're alien pigs. That would be more than hundreds of miles.
Driven, light years.
Light years, yeah. Maybe that's how they know.
Interesting stuff,
so,
Matthew.
Yeah, so these Neolithic people, anyway, right back, and we're getting to the end of this original old Neolithic stuff. They also ate dairy products, fermented milk and cheese, and probably, I'm not happy with the term probably here, but anyway, they drank barley beer or mead made from honey, and they had decorated pottery beakers, because that was a real must-have for the ancient Neolithic people, which I presume entering into the beaker people, is that like a denomination of one of the periods of civilization in Western Europe?
But I'm not sure exactly what it means or where it comes from, but I'm quite surprised that they had pottery.
Yeah, well, pottery is just clay, isn't it? It's just clay that's been heated up. So,
but you have to like spin it in a wee wheel and stuff.
But so the beaker people, they created pottery beakers. So and that's I can have a quick look, because we can find out about the age of them. But
traditions carry on, because I've got a pottery beaker in my hand.
Well, there you go.
It's got the half mead in it. So I'm feeling quite Neolithic here at this.
I thought you weren't going to drink any mead tonight. You said you had to drive.
Yeah, I was supposed to drop my daughter off at the train station. She's going to see the Vamps tonight.
Ah. But so she's cool. She's cooler than you. She's officially cooler than you.
Anybody's cooler than me, apart from you.
No, thanks.
So I don't need to drive, because our friend's mum said she would do it. So
woohoo! But anyway, the beaker people, I'm looking here, 4,400 years ago, the beaker people in Britain.
Whoa.
And they have very nice beakers. Some of them found in France, and others found in Scotland. Bathgate in Scotland.
Near me.
Yeah. Pottery, 4,500 years ago, bell-shaped pottery style appears in Iberia, and which is obviously Spain and Portugal. These bell beakers quickly spread across Europe, reaching Britain fewer than 100 years later. So, around about the time or while Stonehenge was maybe still being used for whatever it was being used for.
Well, there you go. If anybody's a historical fiction author and they're wondering if beakers were period correct, well, we're correct for pretty much any period that you're writing.
There you go. Yeah. So study shows beaker culture spread into Central Europe from Iberia into Bronze Age Britain.
And then we had Saturnalia.
So then, on to Saturnalia. You mentioned originally, so do you want to tell us a bit about Saturnalia?
Well, obviously I've written one novel about the Romans, and so there was a scene in that, because one of the things that they did during that time was everything would be turned upside down. So the masters would become slaves for however long, and the slaves would become the master. and they would have good fun doing this. So in my book, there's a scene that shows that. It's not really like Christmas that much, but I think the idea was just that everybody get good food and drunk quite
Well,
a
isn't it
bit.
just a bit debauched? So it's
Yes,
sort of like,
exactly. Yeah, to be honest, most of these festivals, and our books as well, seem to just be an excuse to get a good drink and eat a lot of meat and bread and cheese and stuff.
but I thought that, so in this sort of period of hedonistic indulgence of food and drink, and also the topsy-turvy thing of the slaves given temporary freedom and being able to insult their masters or something without being killed. I thought that some of those traditions, I think they actually sort of do flow through into medieval Christmas. So later on, we're sort of going through history, but we could sort of get to that in a bit. But
Yeah, they
as
do
we're
keep
going,
some of those traditions, don't they?
yeah.
Yeah.
So all the sort of drinking and boozing, and also some of the
the
topsy-turvy
swapping.
things. So yeah. So we can get to that in a bit. So in Lucia, which is your Roman novel, which I
Slave,
haven't
yeah.
read, I apologize for that. But your slave girl Lucia. So does she end up becoming like the master or the mistress of the house for a day and go and insult people, or does she use it in some other way? Or
No, actually, she's not really involved that much. There's one of the slaves actually hits the master in the eye with an egg, if I remember right. So there's kind of trouble comes from that because he's taking it too far. This, he's assaulted the master then, and so he then gets into trouble. To be honest, I don't really remember the scene that well. But I've got a feeling it's one of the other slaves that punishes him for it, just because she's a nasty piece of work. But yeah, this was the kind of things that they would do. The masters would have to serve the slaves their food that day, their dinner or whatever. And yeah, it sounds like a nice time for the slaves anyway. I suppose the masters were just like, this is only for one day.
It's a bit of a weird thing, isn't it? It's such a strange thing. But I suppose all these traditions, when you start analysing them and looking at them, they are strange, really. So another thing, I mean, a link to sort of Saturnalia, the same sort of period. Saturnalia, I think, started on like the 17th of December or something. So it was around the midwinter solstice, but I'm not really sure how long it lasted. But another thing that happened on December 25th, or thereabouts, because I'm not really sure, because of course the difference in calendar at the time, and so anyway. But apparently on December the 25th was when certain Romans, lots of Romans, would celebrate the birthday of Mithra, who of course was one of their gods, and was an infant god that was believed to have been born of a rock. And for some Romans, so it's good because of course he's into rock. But for some Romans, Mithra's birthday was the most sacred day of the year. And of course, 25th of December becomes the birth of Christ, but it's a made-up date. So I mean, I'm not saying whether Christ or Jesus Christ existed or not, or whether he was the Son of God or not, but the date itself definitely was made up.
The date was just jumped on.
And like with all of these things, it seems likely that December the 25th was used because it was already the date.
Yeah, it's much easier
the Mithra.
Yeah, to supplant a tradition with your own by just keeping it as similar as possible.
Exactly, and that's what Christianity has done throughout history. And as we move further through the years towards the present day, in our sort of discussion of Christmas over the centuries, we'll see that happens over and over again. So in the early times of Christianity, because Easter was the main tradition. They didn't really celebrate Christmas in the first few centuries of Christianity at all. And again, though, Easter, of course, was built again on the rites of spring,
pagan ideas,
and the pagan Estra Monath in the Anglo-Saxons. But I think in general, it's a fertility, the beginning of the rites of spring, and all this sort of stuff. So again, they sort of jumped onto that date, and they celebrated not the birth of Christ, but the death and resurrection of Christ, which is in fact more important, really, for the Christian tradition. The whole symbolism of the rebirth of Christ is more important than his actual birth. But it was in the 4th century where Christians added nativity, as it was called then, or the Latin equivalent. And it was all about Jesus's birth, obviously. And we mentioned the date, but obviously people would have questioned many times why the 25th of December makes any sense. Because why would the shepherds be out in the middle of winter time, with their flocks of sheep? It doesn't make a lot of sense. They wouldn't probably be doing that. But Pope Julius I chose December the 25th in an effort to adopt the Saturnalia feast, and I think Mithra as well. As we said, easier to jump on another tradition and carry on. So originally, called the Feast of the Nativity, and it spread originally to Egypt in sort of the 5th century, and then later, a century or two later, into England and across the world. And obviously, the word Christmas, of course, comes from Christ's Mass, which was not mentioned as a term, I think, until something like I don't think we've seen it written down until like the 11th century.
Yeah, it was really late on.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the idea of appropriating dates to fit with your traditions, I think it's fair enough, to be honest, because we kind of do it now. We see it more like people that aren't even religious. I mean, I was brought up a Christian, but I don't really think of myself as one now. But I still celebrate Christmas, and I still celebrate Easter and things like that. I just do it in a kind of secular way. So I think it's fair enough that Christians would come along, and I've just reversed what the Christians have done, really. So I think it's fair enough, because why change something that isn't broke? If you want to celebrate something at that time of year, and there's already interesting and good traditions there.
I mean, it certainly makes sense in terms of evangelizing and spreading the word of your religion. In Christianity's case, it certainly makes sense, isn't it? If everyone's already going to have a big feast midwinter,
you'll just say, "Well, this is for Jesus."
Have the feast, and we'll stick a cross up at the end or whatever.
This is for Jesus rather than Dionysus. You can drink and be merry for Jesus.
And nobody cares. They're just drinking, and they're going, whatever. I don't care if I'm drinking for the nativity or I'm drinking for whatever.
It makes it much easier to take over.
And then, of course, within a couple of generations, everyone's forgotten the previous thing, and it's just moved on.
Or they've maybe, but they still maybe even keep some of the traditions for thousands of years, maybe.
Exactly, but they forget where they originated.
Or it's just been they just don't really care anymore.
Moving into sort of the Anglo-Saxon period, which is obviously both of us are writing lots of our stuff now into that sort of period of British history. So in the early part of the Anglo-Saxon period, they didn't have Christmas really at all. Later on, of course, Christianity had swept through Britain, and Christmas became a thing later on. But to start with, they would just be celebrating the midwinter, and they called it Yule or Yola or whatever the word is. And that, again, is around the 21st of December. And I think they celebrate, I think Yule actually is like from the 21st of December right through to like the end of January. It's not just like one day or 12 days. It's like a longer period. There's different reasons why they did that. It's the celebrating the fact that the turn of the year, like the solstice celebrations, is really just celebrating the fact this is the shortest day of the year. From after that, the days are getting longer, things are getting better. But also it's a period just after they slaughtered lots of animals for the winter, because you still got a few months of winter left. And if you're up in like the north of Britain or Scandinavia, you still got a lot of really harsh months ahead.
Yeah, to come.
So you'd feast, because you couldn't really store the meat very well. So you had to slaughter lots of the animals so that you didn't have to feed them all fodder over the winter. So you'd kill a few. And then
it would be very tempting, wouldn't it? If you've got all this meat there.
It's otherwise it's going to go off anyway. So
even if it wouldn't, I think if you'd been not really eating that much, and then all of a sudden you've got these big chunks of meat and just sitting there shouting to you to be eaten, it could be a great temptation.
Well, and they certainly did. So they'd have their big feast, the Yule log.
Which and the Vikings had this as well. So
it's all the same stuff really. And I've thinking about the Yule log apparently burning for 12 days. I'd like to see the size of a log that you could get to burn for 12 days.
Well, I've got there's a little article on my website that I wrote a few years ago, and there's a picture on there of this Yule log, and it's basically just a small tree that they've cut the branches off. So they would drag this tree, really, a big thick tree trunk. It could maybe take 10 of them to carry it in. So I'd imagine it wasn't every peasant house, like in Anglo-Saxon England, wouldn't have one of these. It would be the Great Hall, and they would drag in this huge log, and then they would just, I don't know if they stuck the whole thing in the fire and just moved it up, is it?
Maybe, yeah, maybe just, I don't know, it just feels like, I mean, if you've ever lit, had an open fire or lit a fire, the wood burns pretty quickly, it does.
Yeah, but that's why, if it's such a big log, and they would carve protective runes into it as well.
Oh, nice.
It'd be good to know how exactly it worked.
Yeah, it's just so difficult when you read these things. I mean, there's probably somebody listening to this going like, well, I know how it works. Well, if you do know how it works, then let us know, because
there'll be a YouTube video, actually, probably, of some survivalist like Bear Grylls that chopped down a tree and put it in his custom-made settlement that he's built.
That would be Bear Grylls. He'd be in the 5-star hotel.
He's the only one I can think of.
He'll be in a 5-star hotel telling someone else to do it.
Somebody else.
Stick that in your take the Yule log. Get the tractor to carry the Yule log down.
Well, they also had Odin, who was an old man with a white beard, which is probably familiar to us all. And he was supposed to fly around on his 8-legged horse, Sleipnir, and he would give out gifts to the good and punishments to the bad. And folk would even entice him into their houses by leaving out food and drink for him, which is all passed on to us in the Santa
That's interesting,
Claus.
because I read some stuff about that, and it was about how it mentioned in the thing I read much more about the punishments and sort of that people feared him because he would fly through the night, sort of terrorizing people for any evil they'd done or any bad they'd done, and that's why people stayed in their halls for 12 nights over Yule, to not go out. They didn't want to go out to be seen at night. But I don't know. I mean, probably both of those things are.
And back in those days, I mean, it was probably much easier to believe in bad stuff was going to happen to you.
It's much more likely, I suppose, than getting a present. Yeah.
You're not going to get a gift off a guy in an 8-legged horse, are you?
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's why they drank so much.
I was going to say, if you drink enough mead,
you would
believe that
you would see that horse, because there was supposed to be people that saw the wild hunt and things like this. Yeah. Even to this day, people claim that they've heard the wild hunt passing by over their house and stuff. So who knows? Odin had a lot of strange stories about him.
Yes, I mean, it's a perfect catch-all for any sort of weird thing that happens, isn't it? It's old, because of course they basically like Gandalf, isn't he? I mean, Gandalf
he looks
like,
just
like Odin. Yeah, it's like walking around with his staff or whatever, and his
his beard,
his long beard. So another thing so this is something that I'd not really heard about until I started doing research for the Serpent Sword, and the early Anglo-Saxon period, was that around Christmas Eve, they would celebrate Modranecht or Modranicht, which means Mother's Night or the Night of the Mothers, and it's a pagan ceremony. And it's mentioned by the Venerable Bede in his 8th century writings. But I think it's a bit difficult to know really exactly what it's all about, because there's not much written about it. And so scholars have proposed different connections with different things, and saying it's linked to Yule and linked to female ancestral beings and stuff. But I don't know.
I've never heard of it before.
Had you never heard of it? No, I mentioned it in
not that I remember.
The Serpent Sword. Yeah, because I found out
I have read that book.
Well,
but I don't remember
But I mentioned it because I realised that they didn't celebrate Christmas, and it was like, what do they celebrate? And they kind of mentioned the fact that they had this thing, Modranicht, and I thought, well,
this is the thing, that they all had various different things that they would celebrate. I mean, it wasn't just like one culture; they covered everyone at every time, even in the same country. Like the Danes, the Vikings, they all came from different places, small settlements. So. Yeah. There would be some interchange of ideas, but there must have been their own ideas of things, that people would have family traditions of their own.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because this one, Bede talks about it, and then like later on, people have sort of said, well, is it? Did he? Because there's a few things when Bede has said stuff, and it's like he's talked about the pagans that came only 2 or 3 generations before him, and people are sort of taking it all with a pinch of salt and say, was it right or was it?
Well, this is what I mean.
Has he missed the point or not understood or whatever that people have told him?
Or maybe he's maybe spoken to like one specific Viking or Northman or whatever, and they've told him about their tradition.
Yeah.
But then most of the other Vikings wouldn't have had any of that. So that's why it was never written down, never passed on. But so he's maybe got a true story of one family's traditions, and he's written it down for us to learn about, whereas not a single other person in that country or whatever may be bothered with stuff like that.
It could be. I mean, you just know, do you? I mean, this is the thing. It's so long ago. So and of course, it depends on who his witness was, whoever told him whatever story he was getting. And I mean, it's the same.
They could have been winding him up.
Well, it's the same as when he talks about the history of the kings, the recent kings. You've got to sort of take it with a pinch of salt, because he's getting a story and then twisting it to tell his own tale. And so, anyway.
I suppose we do the same, don't we?
Absolutely.
We try and find historical fact and put it into our fiction books, but at the end of the day, we're making stuff up and just doing the best we can. And I suppose back then for him, it would be even harder. He had to find people that would tell him, actual eyewitnesses.
Yeah, I mean, amazingly, he wrote it down, and it is as interesting and as good as it is. That it's stood the test of time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it was pretty incredible. I doubt anyone's going to be reading our books in 1400 years. So moving on to medieval Christmas. So after the early Anglo-Saxon, we move into the later Anglo-Saxon period, the Middle Ages, and Christianity by this point had taken over, really replaced all of the pagan religions in Britain for the most part. There might have been people still worshipping certain arcane rites and things and traditions in certain villages and things, but as a country,
we were Christian. Wolfe said, my very first novel, there's a scene where they sacrifice an ox, and that was true. They did do that at the time, and the church really frowned on it.
Yeah, I bet.
But, they did still do it. They weren't pagans, but it was a pagan ritual, and it was just something that they liked to do, that it carried on, because they would obviously eat the meat and things like that. And it was just a particular ritual that they would carry on with. They were Christians, but some of these traditions did carry on. Yeah.
And so we talked about Saturnalia and how those things carried on as well. And in the 12 days of Christmas, which would reach a crescendo on the 6th of January, which is 12th night, the Epiphany, over those 12 days, there'll be loads of celebrations and people really let rip and be quite debauched. And they did this thing, the servants as masters thing that we talked about before.
Yep.
And gift giving, so similar to Saturnalia. And they also carried over some of the Yule stuff. So they still talked about a Yule log, which they would keep burning throughout the season. I don't know how they managed it, as we talked about, but they decorated houses with evergreens, and they would eat decorated boar's heads and drink something called mulled braggot, which apparently is extra strong ale with honey and cinnamon spiked with brandy. How does that sound?
That sounds quite good. It's just a bit like wassail, which was cider or ale with like honey and cinnamon spices or whatever. So
wassail, is that? So the wassailing, is that when people go around singing? They do the wassailing and they go to the doors and.
Yeah, well, that's the West Hale. What does it mean again? Good health.
But is it Christmas they do it, isn't it? The wassailing, and they go around and sing outside your door or whatever.
Well, they don't do it up here in Scotland, so I've never seen any of the wassailing, but they do in my novellas and stuff.
I think they do, some sort of villages down my way, down south.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, this was, I think, specifically the cider. I mean, if you live in an area that produces a lot of apples,
Somerset and Wiltshire,
they would probably make their wassail with apples, so it'd be cider. And other locations that never had apples would probably make it with ale, and I'd spice it up, and then you would stick your warm poker in it, and you'd have a nice warm drink for your Christmas. I mean, these things, they all sound great, don't they?
They'll just boozing all the time.
Yeah, they're all just drinking this great booze and eating this great meat and lots of it.
I mean, they're working hard all day, aren't they? I mean, the life story is pretty crap, but
they
every now and
definitely,
again,
yeah, they work much harder than you anyway.
Thanks. I've no doubt. There's no doubt. But going back to the thing of the masters, the servants and masters on its head thing, they did this thing. One person, either a beggar or some sort of student or someone, would be crowned Lord of Misrule, and basically lord it over everybody else in the village or the settlement. And then
Sounds good, eh?
Yeah, sounds good. It could be you. I mean, it doesn't say idiot, but
Thanks.
but maybe you could I don't know, to be the beggar. But and then the poor would go to the houses of the rich and demand their best food and drink. And if they didn't get it, then they'd terrorize them with mischief, which sounds very much like
Halloween.
Funky Night or Halloween.
Yep. Yeah. All these traditions really are the same.
It's all the same
thing. Yeah, just
pissed.
A couple of months later. Get pissed, throw eggs at people's houses, toilet paper them, and then and eat a load of stuff, and then annoy people.
Yeah. So Christmas has become a big thing by the end of the Middle Ages, right? We've gone through the Tudor period as well. It becomes even, it carries on evolving, becoming a really big thing. There's 12 days of Christmas and everything. So do you know when Christmas was cancelled?
Well, I do, because you've got it written down here.
Well, yeah, but nobody else knows that. Only you and me know that.
Well, I did a small bit of research earlier on today, and I noticed it. And it was funny because it was somebody called Ben Johnson was kind of the first person that ever brought Father Christmas into the UK. I don't even think he called him Father Christmas. And that was, I don't know, 15th century. No, it was long after that, sorry. 17th century or something. Yeah, 16th or 17th century.
Could be 17th, yeah, could be.
And so it was not long after that. And he was actually a Protestant. I'm sure he said in some that he was a good Protestant, which I thought was quite interesting.
But it would be if it was 16th century.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the thing. And then not long after that, the Christmas was cancelled. And there wasn't even any Twitter at the time, so I'm not sure how they cancelled it.
It's cancel culture in the 17th century. Yeah, it was Oliver Cromwell and his Puritans. So when they took over England in 1645, Christmas was cancelled. Boom.
So that was it. The hashtag that year was Christmas
is cancelled. Hashtag Oliver Cromwell sucks. But yeah, so Oliver Cromwell, yeah, they did it, and so for there was a few years there until the monarchy was reinstated and it was all back to normal.
Back to normal.
After a while, everyone had fun again. For some reason, they thought it was a papist Catholic thing, and that they were very anti. Like they destroyed all of the statues and pretty things in churches and everything. Anything like that was idolatry, and you couldn't have fun. And so, who wants to be a Puritan? Not me. Anyway.
Sounds terrible.
It sounds awful. It sounds like the opposite of any religion I'd want to be part of.
Yeah, all these other great traditions. That sounds like the antithesis of all of those.
It pretty much is. In fact, I remember hearing Bernard Cornwell more than once saying that he thinks the whole of history is the two factions is like the Puritans on one side of and the other side it's like the libertarians, and the sort of the conflict between two people that basically want to make everybody miserable and sort of follow the rules and do everything boring, and then the other side that just want to have fun. And he said, which side would you want to be on?
I'll be right in the middle, I think.
I think I'd be somewhere in the middle, law-abiding,
slightly closer to the side that's just drinking, and
I'd definitely be on the side of having fun.
TP in houses and stuff.
But so the Christmas being cancelled thing, that also happened in America. So the Pilgrims that went to America in 1620, they were even more orthodox than Cromwell in their Puritan beliefs, and so Christmas was not a holiday in early America. And from 1659 to 1681, the celebration of Christmas was outlawed in Boston, and anyone exhibiting the Christmas spirit was fined 5 shillings. I don't know what that exhibiting the Christmas spirit means, but just going around going, hey, ho, 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 Merry Christmas, right? You're fined.
Wearing a red hat with white fur.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably quite common back then too.
It was, yeah. So yeah, it's weird, and it's interesting factoid that after the American Revolution, English customs fell out of favor, which included Christmas. And Christmas wasn't then declared a federal holiday in America until 1870, which I thought was interesting.
That's a long time.
That's a long time not to have Christmas, basically for a good nearly, well, what's that,
200 years.
80, well, but 80 years. So this is, I think Christmas had been reinstated in the late 17th century, but then this was after the American Revolution, which was what, 1780 or something like that. So yes, probably about 90 years, 80, 90 years.
They've made up for it now.
Yeah, they made up for it now. Now they have Christmas all like for 3 months of the year or something. So this now we've moved into 19th century, which I think is when we really come to the invention of what Christmas is nowadays and what we think of as Christmas. All these.
Well, it was getting close anyway.
We're getting close, but we're definitely getting. I think lots of the stuff that's kind of filtered through comes from this sort of Victorian image that appeared. And two people that, in my limited research, were important in creating that sort of myth or understanding of what Christmas was or should be, a traditional Christmas, was Washington Irving, the writer, the American writer, who wrote a book called The Sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon, which I've never heard of to be honest. But it's a series of stories, and it's all about about Christmas in an English manner. But he talks about he talks about these ancient customs, which included things like the Lord of Misrule, and it wasn't really based on any sort of factual information he had. It was just like a story. It basically was a story.
Just made it up.
Yeah. And so historians do say that he sort of invented certain traditions, but he sort of he created this sort of feel of what a traditional Christmas would be like in England, with everybody all getting along together, the poor and the rich all living together in perfect harmony. It was all great.
Sounds realistic.
Sounds just like England at the time. Of course, there was no class system.
Yeah, no class divide or anything.
Not at all. Yeah, and Charles Dickens, of course, more famously wrote A Christmas Carol sometime around the same sort of period, mid 19th century. And I think recently you were reading that. I seem to remember seeing online that you were reading or listening to the audio.
Yeah, I was listening. Carol. I listen to it every year, usually a different version, and I also watch the Patrick Stewart version of A Christmas Carol because he's a very handsome bald man like myself.
Yeah. I've never seen that. I've never seen that version. I should watch it.
Well, it's not even streaming, so you can't see it unless you've got it in DVD, which I have because I like it that much. It's probably the best version to me, I think. So, yeah, I always watch that. I love A Christmas Carol. I think it's brilliant. So I listen to it on Audible, various versions. And
it's incredibly cinematic, the way it's described. I think the description is very modern.
Even the book, they actually,
in the book, no, I'm saying in the book, yeah.
And the films usually do quite a good job of, making everything seem bigger than it would have been at the time. It really does. I don't know, everything comes to life for me. I love it. Yeah, and I must be honest, apart from bursting into tears every time Tiny Tim's mentioned, every time I listen to it, I watch it, I always want to give money to charity. So I think I can't be the only one that feels like that. So I think he's certainly got his message across well over all these years.
So, as a massive fan of Christmas Carol, which I'm sure everybody listening has read the book or seen a TV version or a film version of it. If not, you must know the story. There's been so many different film versions made that are very similar, even if they're not exactly the same.
Yeah, the story's
following the same premise.
Yeah.
Which is always about, somebody being visited by looking at their past life and their future life and the present life and seeing how things could be. And, like the famous It's a Wonderful Life is very similar, isn't it? When he's sort of shown.
I don't remember seeing that, to be honest.
You've not seen that?
No, I must have seen it. I'm sure I have.
Oh my goodness.
So long ago that I don't remember.
Well, if you like A Christmas Carol,
yeah,
honestly, it's a fantastic movie. You need to see it.
I'll watch that then, because that is on Amazon.
That's on streaming. It's one of the best movies ever made.
Right, okay.
I'm absolutely. I mean, bear with it because it's black and white. It's like from 1940 something.
I don't mind that. Yeah,
but it's you've got to bear with it. If you get to the end of it, I guarantee you'll cry. If you don't cry, then we can't be friends anymore.
I'll be crying all the way through.
We'll have to cancel. We'll have to cancel the podcast. You'll love it. Honestly, you'll love it.
As long as there's no Tiny Tim in it.
There's no Tiny Tim, but
Oh,
it's a film. Basically, the whole story of that film is he's shown
what the error of his ways.
Well, it's a bit a twist on it, but he's basically shown what life would be like without him in it, and so it's just slightly different, but it's all around Christmas, and it's very similar. The idea of being sort of shown an alternative reality and then realize what you've got or what you haven't got or whatever, So it's a twist on the Christmas Carol theme, but it's really, really well done, and you'll love it. It's great. So I was going to say that as a fan of the Christmas Carol, have you seen the film The Man Who Invented Christmas?
Oh, that I remember again. No, I don't think so.
So that's a 2017 movie, and it's available on streaming somewhere. And it stars Dan Stevens as Dickens. It's actually the story of the writing of A Christmas Carol, but it's brilliant. It's really, really good. We saw it by chance a couple of years ago, I think during lockdown, and it's really good. And as a writer, you'll love it even more because it depicts incredibly well the life of a writer with a busy family.
Yeah.
And he's struggling all the time to have like half an hour to sit down and write the bloody book. And he needs to write this book because he's got creditors and stuff, and he needs to pay the bills. And he's self-published in the end. He publishes it himself because nobody wants to publish it. So he's like the first self-published writer,
first indie author.
Yeah, but he's going crazy trying to publish this and get it. And he's like, there's all these scenes of him like in his room getting the muse, and then one of his kids comes in or whatever and says, Dad, you're gonna do something. And he's like, fuck! And he gets really annoyed. He's like, leave me alone, I'm trying to write. The servant.
Yeah, we know that.
Somebody knocked on the door. They come to ask you about paying the gas bill or whatever it is, and he's like, it's brilliant, and it's really good film. And
I thought it was a gas bill, Matthew.
Well, whatever, the thing. Well, it might be gas. I don't know. Anyway,
Cratchit, turn that gas up.
Yeah, or to pay for his coal or something. I don't know. He just keeps on getting all these sort of
distractions
and distractions, and it's
very realistic.
It really rang true as a writer, and it's based around the story of the fact that he wrote this thing very, very quickly and to a deadline, because it had to go out just before Christmas, and he needed to get it to the printers before Christmas and get it. And I think he paid for the first, I don't know how many it was, 1,000 copies,
100
whatever.
copies or something.
And he put it out there, and of course it did fantastically well. It got written up in the Times or something, and then it went haywire.
Viral, basically.
Basically went viral. So recommended. 100%.
Well, that's good, because there's a book, although I listened to it in the audiobook as well, and it's actually the story of Jacob Marley.
Okay.
And it tells you how he ended up where he did. It's nowhere near as good as A Christmas Carol, but it's quite interesting to look at it from Marley's point of view. So there's another recommendation.
What's that one? What's that called?
I don't even remember. You put me in the spot. I wasn't going to mention it.
Oh, well, there you go. But that's Marley.
I wouldn't even be able to find it.
Oh, well.
I don't remember.
But Marley's the one who appears as the...
Yeah, he was Scrooge's business partner.
Yeah, he appears as the ghost at the beginning. He's the first one who comes as the ghost, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's carrying all the chains, and then he pulls the thing off and his jaw falls down. And so he's Jacob Marley. So it's how Jacob Marley ended up where he did.
Ah, good. So we mentioned Santa Claus a few times, and I'm sure people... Well, you mentioned Father Christmas as well, and so... It was an interesting thing there. So when I was growing up, we never talked about Santa Claus. It was always Father Christmas in the UK. And
I
Santa
find that
Claus
strange.
has become a real thing.
Yeah, well, in Scotland, we didn't. We called it Santa.
Really? We never
and I
did.
mean, you're a little bit older than me, but not that much. Well, 6 years or something.
4 or 5 years, 5, 6 years. So I don't remember
I heard
Santa Claus being a thing.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast.
20s or 30s or something, yeah.
And there was a podcast I was listening to. It's called Total Christmas Podcast, and I think he's about 40. The guy, he's from England, and he was calling it Father Christmas, but his American correspondent was calling him Santa Claus. So it was almost an English and American thing. But we definitely called him Santa in Scotland.
Are you sure? As a kid,
yep. I never ever called him Father Christmas ever.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you got the things like there's a Kinks song like back from it must be the early 70s. You know, Father Christmas, give me some money or whatever it is. So definitely we call him Father Christmas. But
Is that a real song? I've never heard that song.
you never
But
heard
it
the Kinks
sounds
song, Father
no, but I've
Christmas?
heard the Spinal Tap song that's called "Give Me Some Money."
No,
So that's obviously where they get that then.
Oh yeah, it's the Kinks song here, Father Christmas. Yeah, we
I've
have to
never
listen
heard
to
that.
that as well.
No, no, good because I do quite like the Kinks. Yeah, I've
Oh, the
got a
Kinks
few
are
good
brilliant.
songs.
It's all. I think it's all. Anyway, I think the Father Christmas song. I think it's called Father Christmas. Maybe it's not. But I'm gonna have a
Well,
look
the
now.
Spinal Tap, you know the Spinal
Yeah,
Tap song,
I know the song.
and it's obviously based
give me
on the
some
Kinks type
money.
era. Aye, that's a great song.
Yeah, so Father Christmas, the Kinks. It is a thing. I'm just seeing when it came out. Yeah, it's all about. Oh, well, they mentioned Santa Claus in the lyrics though as well. So when I was small, I believed in Santa Claus. So I knew it was my dad, and I would hang up my stocking at Christmas, open my presents, and I'd be glad. These are the lyrics, by the way. But the last time I played Father Christmas, I stood outside a department store. A gang of kids came over and mugged me and knocked my reindeer to the floor. This is the lyrics of the
His reindeer.
Yeah.
So euphemism.
And then they said, Father Christmas, give us some money. Don't mess around with those silly toys. We'll beat you up if you don't hand it over. We want your bread, so don't make us annoyed. Give us all the toys. This is basically beating
Sounds
him up.
like a punk song.
Yeah, well, it's in the 70s. I think he wrote this in the 70s, I reckon. Davis.
The book I was talking about is actually just called Jacob T. Marley.
Oh, there you go.
That's on Audible. And it's a decent listen.
Yeah, 77 was that Father Christmas.
So probably, well, it kind of is punk then.
It's basically
punk,
hits the punk era.
Yeah, then never mind the bollocks. I think was about 77, 78.
Yeah. So there you go. So it's all about and it's all about the class divide and kids beating up guy pretending to be Father Christmas outside the department store or whatever. Anyway, back to St. Nicholas, Father Christmas, and Saint Nick. So yeah, we got this divide. I thought that Father Christmas was definitely, when I was growing up, we talked much more about Father Christmas than Santa Claus, but both things now have become sort of analogous.
Yeah. But again, before you go on it, this just shows what I was saying earlier about different traditions and different settlements, Vikings, Anglo-Saxons, or whatever. It wasn't just one overarching tradition that they would have. There would be all various ones. And there we go, me and you growing up in like the late 70s, early 80s, in the same country.
Yeah, effectively. I mean, yeah.
And I can guarantee that someone from Scotland who's the same age as me, maybe lived in a different part of Glasgow, probably write in and say, no, we called him Father Christmas. What are you talking about? So it just shows you that these traditions are all, we all hear about the different ones eventually, and it all becomes one. But
it is interesting, isn't it? How this, like, in literally in one generation, it's become like our kids would not bat an eyelid at Father Christmas or Santa Claus. They understand both.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's it.
And the picture's the same man.
Yeah.
With a big white beard and the red suit and stuff.
Which, of course, you and I think of him as Odin.
Well, I do now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's these two different traditions, though, right? That have come together. Really, you mentioned before Father Christmas. Yeah. So where did Father Christmas come from originally?
Well, that's what I was saying. It was this guy Ben Johnson was supposed to have first mentioned him, but it wasn't. I don't even think it was Father Christmas. It was Old Christmas or Mr. Christmas or something like that. And they had all these various names. And it would kind of.
And he didn't wear red, did he? It was.
No, I think to me, when you see the pictures of him, he looks more like the Green Man, you know, with the ivy kind of garland round his head, and he's got the big beard, and he's a bit like the representation of, I think it's the Ghost of Christmas Present in the movies. So it's kind of like the Green Man or Dionysus or Bacchus, because these are all similar ideas. And in fact, one of the pictures it looked exactly like Dionysus riding on the back of a goat with the big horns and stuff.
Okay, yeah.
So that kind of thing would have been looked down on by the church, because obviously the goat being satanic or whatever.
Have you seen the Blackadder Christmas special?
Not that I remember. I'm sure I have, but so long ago.
So Robbie Coltrane does the Ghost of Christmas Present, and he's
Right.
dressed like that. He's like the Green Man. He's all dressed in green. He's got the big beard.
Yeah.
He's got the garland and stuff. You should definitely watch it. Again, that's available somewhere online on iPlayer or something. It's really funny. It's really, really funny.
I like Blackadder.
Because
That is quite
it's
good.
the Blackadder from the Elizabethan period, so
Yeah.
it's like the really funny season 2, I guess. And well, no, is it? No, it's no, it does. No, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting it. It basically has all different time. They jump through time and shows him the future and the past and all the different things. It's really good. So he does show him some Elizabethan stuff, but it's all set in Victorian originally. Yeah, it's really good.
Well, that's kind of what's turned into Father Christmas. All these ideas kind of come together. And then I think the red soup is probably the Coca-Cola
Probably
thing. I'm sure that is where it came from.
You reckon? Yeah.
They made the red soup undoubtedly to fit in with their branding, with the red and the white.
How
so they've taken a
disappointing.
character that had green on originally, the beard and stuff, and they've just put him in red, and it's stuck.
So of course, that's where the idea of these old Christmas or Christmas Man or the Green Man or Father Christmas came from. St. Nicholas, just for anyone listening who doesn't know, I'm pretty sure people listening will know, but he was originally a Turkish saint, St. Nicholas, from the 3rd century, the end of the 3rd century. And he became famous because he gave away all of his wealth that he'd inherited and traveled the countryside helping the poor and sick. And he became known as the protector of children and sailors. But I guess the protector of children became the thing. And he entered American popular culture in the late 18th century in New York when Dutch families apparently gathered to honor the anniversary of the death of St. Nicholas, which is Dutch for St. Nicholas. And the shortened version of that is Sinterklaas, which then became Santa Claus. And that's how we got the name, Santa Claus. So it's from the Dutch Sinterklaas.
You can see where St. Nicholas turned into Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see where that did that. But I think back then it wasn't so much, Father Christmas wasn't so much about gifts for children. It went back again to what we were talking about earlier. He was basically a representation or a symbol of adults getting drunk and eating loads of stuff at Christmas time.
Just enjoying themselves and letting rip because it was midwinter and we have
just
to
getting
celebrate.
wasted on alcohol and pies. And he was the symbol of it.
Sounds perfect. Yeah.
They should probably go back to that.
Well, I think in a couple of weeks' time, I'm pretty sure in a couple of weeks' time when Christmas rolls on, I'm sure we will be drinking lots of beer and eating lots of food, and probably many of our listeners will be too. And we've mentioned A Christmas Carol and some other Washington Irving and things. So I know you as well have written many Christmas novellas and short stories and novelettes and things because you're a Christmas freak.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about that, because I've never written a Christmas story.
Well, we've both done kind of Halloween-y type stories. But I'm the only one
I copied you.
Yeah, well, you need to copy me with this as well.
I probably should, yeah.
Because, I mean, I just think that the Christmas setting is perfect for historical fiction, because this is one of the ways that we set the scene in historical fiction, is with the food and drink that people eat and the traditions that they had at that time. So it kind of puts your story in a place and a setting and a time. If you make it set at a Christmas in a certain year, or even
I think the reason I haven't done it is because the books that I've written, like the series, is before Christmas was a thing.
Yeah,
so they didn't celebrate
Christmas.
Well,
I've been lucky because I do the medieval ones. Yeah. So like Friar Tuck, obviously, perfect because he's like a clergyman.
Loves his food and stuff, and great.
And it's obviously very Christian. So, yes, I don't even know how many I've written now. There must be about 5 or 6.
So what's the latest one that you've released?
The newest
recently?
one is A Pedlar's Promise, which was kind of based on a real event.
Is that about a cyclist?
Pedlar, not Pedlar.
Okay, sorry.
So it was based on something that happened in the summer where somebody actually gifted me a really nice Gibson electric guitar from America. An unbelievable gift, but it gets stuck in customs and FedEx wouldn't release it to me and told me they were going to send it back to the USA. And I'm sitting here going,
crying.
you know, if it gets sent back to him, the guy will probably realise what a crazy gift he sent me and he'll just keep it. So for a couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, there was this terrible stress that I was not going to get this amazing gift. And I ended up writing a story about it, but putting it in a medieval setting and just tweaking it a wee bit. So I got the guitar in the end, and I also got this novelette. And
so double whammy.
Yeah, and it's basically just Friar Tuck sends a gift, and this drunken peddler's supposed to take it to Little John and Will Scarflock, but the drunken peddler gets lost somewhere, just like FedEx did with my guitar. And but it all turns out kind of all right in the end, and it's all just good fun, you know. There's nothing. Some of the novellas I've written at Christmas are quite dark and they're about murderers and stalkers and stuff like that. Christmas ghost story, almost, you know, that type of thing, but usually based on kind of real events. This one, Pedlar's Promise, is more of a fun thing, and I just love writing them because I do love
Sounds
Christmas.
great.
So yeah, I just love to get in the atmosphere with the snow coming down in the book and the holly and the ivy all dotted around the alehouse. Tuck and Little John sitting with a glass of warmed ale with the poker's been in it, and you know, it's just very evocative, and I just love writing scenes like that. They're great.
I don't think I've written any novels or novellas or stories where people haven't been killed horrendously.
But they all your characters, just like mine, you know, the best part is when they stop for a feast.
Yeah, they have to eat. Yeah, they have to
exactly.
Eat
so they stop in the Great Hall and they have their feast. So we all do it, don't we? Historical fiction's full of these scenes, whether it's at Christmas or not.
I just think it's funny that that you've written this lovely Christmas story with a happy ending.
Well, it's not really happy. It depends who you are. There's quite a funny ending. I quite like the ending. But there's always fights and stuff.
I'll have to read it at Christmas. We've mentioned a couple of watching and listening traditions. So you said you always listen to and watch A Christmas Carol. What else are your traditions for reading, listening, watching?
I don't really read much out there. There's got a few on Audible that I like, just like ghost stories. And I usually listen to Friar Tuck and the Christmas Devil, which is mine. I wrote myself. But when I was working every year, I would listen to that at Christmas just because I really like the story. It's really quite a heartwarming story in certain ways. It's quite violent as well. But you know, I think it's a nice Christmas tale. But that's about it for the reading. But listening, I always listen to the Jethro Tull Christmas album, of course.
Oh yeah, nice.
Everybody knows I love them. And there's a guitarist called Paul Gilbert.
He
used to be in Mr. Big.
Yeah, Mr. Big.
Yeah. So what was the song they had that people would know? I'm the one who wants to be with you. I'm the one who wants to be with you.
That's the one.
Deep inside, you know, I feel it too.
That's the one.
I don't really listen to Mr. Big that much, but I like the guitarist, Paul Gilbert, and he's got a Christmas album called 'Twas. And I listen to podcasts like Christmas Past podcast, which is really good. You know, there's an episode every day, and he just talks about traditions of Christmas and things like that. It's just really interesting. And the Total Christmas podcast, again, is much the same thing. And obviously, I love Christmas, so I spend a lot of time just listening to stuff about it and just getting in the Christmas mood. And I take it you don't, not so much.
I don't dislike Christmas, but I hate the commercialization of anything. So I just find the whole thing. It's like with Halloween. I just find it all like it just becomes too much.
Too much.
So I don't. I love getting together with the family and opening presents and eating a few extra food and drinking and all that. It's always me that cooks Christmas dinner. So
yeah,
I'm not like a Scrooge, locked away. It's like it's become a tradition. Since the age of 23 or something, I've always cooked Christmas dinner. And I enjoy doing that. I enjoy cooking anyway, but it's a big meal, loads of things, and everybody's. I don't know what it's like in your family, but we have everyone around, and my kids like one's like, "Oh, I don't want this, I don't want that, but I like this, I like that." And so and it's like one person's vegan or something, and another person's like allergic to something, gluten, another person's allergic to dairy. So I'm doing like a million different things, and it's trying to work out the order of things that you're putting in the oven, to roast everything so it all comes out more or less the same
I write
time.
it all down with times next to it, and then a number 1, 2, 3, and I cross them off as I go along.
Yeah. It's like, and then inevitably there's something you've forgotten to put in, and so everything's like ready to serve. It's like, shit, I forgot to put the Brussels sprouts on or whatever.
Well, it's usually the roast potatoes because they take the longest, and you're like, well, I can't just throw them in the oven now.
Yeah, everyone's got to wait. It's like
exactly that's happened.
So we both cook Christmas lunch, and I love all that. I love being with the family and all that. But I don't really get massively into Christmas like you do. Although recently, it's become a bit of a tradition to watch lots of rubbish Christmas movies in the build up to Christmas. My wife and I watch telly, in the evening together, and it's very difficult to find things that we both enjoy. So she doesn't always want to watch what I want to watch, and vice versa. So. But I will happily sit through. Well, happily, I don't know. That's a loose term of the word happily. But I'm okay to sit through like an hour and a half of some crappy Christmas Hallmark movie.
Yeah, my wife likes those, or the Channel 5. It's always the same story.
They're always happy endings. It's always like the rich guy goes to the village somewhere in America, small town America, and then discovers the waitress, whatever, the heart of gold, whatever, and they fall in love and whatever. I don't know. It's always the same sort of thing, but it's all nice and uplifting and always a happy ending. So is
there any you can recommend? Because I had a look on Netflix and Prime.
They're all.
There's nothing. Rubbish. There's really not much. Even ones that I would like to see again.
Hardly any I could find. Netflix are bringing out like one or two every couple of days.
Oh, right. Okay, so I'll check back. Right. I watched Deck the Halls the other day.
Can't remember. Is that like an old one?
No, it's Matthew Broderick and Danny DeVito.
That's an old one. Yeah, okay.
Old?
It's an old one. It's an old one, isn't it? The Deck the Halls one?
No, it's only about 20 years old at the most, the very most.
Well, that's old. It's not a new film, is it?
It's not like A Wonderful Life. It's not filmed in black and white. It's Danny DeVito. Matthew Broderick.
I know, but we're talking about films that come out now, and you're saying it's not old. 20 years old. It's older than both your kids. You still had hair when that was in the cinema, let's put it that way.
That's true.
That's old. I've been listening to just today, and I've listened to it before, but for some reason I discovered it again today. I heard it, and Ronnie James Dio and Tommy Iommi. Tony Iommi. Tony Iommi. Yeah, it's the M in Iommi. Always makes me think of Tommy and other things. Yeah, so Tony Iommi. Sorry, Tony, and Ronnie James Dio back in 2011. I don't know who the other guys on. Maybe it was the whole of Black Sabbath at the time. I'm not sure, but anyway, Tony Iommi and Ronnie James Dio doing God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. And it's amazing because it's got the Black Sabbath sort of chord progression in it, and it's very ponderous and slow, and it's down, down, down.
Traditional doom metal.
Down. It's brilliant, yeah. God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born on Christmas Day. It's like that. Brilliant. So anyone who likes Ronnie James Dio, go listen to him singing that even better than me. To save us all from Satan's power when we were gone astray. That's so good. So if you want to hear that, honestly, go listen to it. As soon as we finish this, go listen to that because it's freaking amazing.
I will.
It's really good. You'll love it.
Maybe we should record the cover of it. We practically have anyway with you singing all that.
If you just go record some guitar. Use your new guitar.
Which one?
Because the one that you were gifted from the Pedlar's Promise. So use that one, and then we can do that.
So we're nearly finished, aren't we? But you asked earlier about gifts, but if you'd got your wife a gift and stuff. I have actually got her a gift, but she won't hear this, so I can say that I've actually bought her a fridge. I can't wait to see her face light up when she opens it.
Oh, it's another dad joke. It's brilliant.
I've been writing
But
them.
the thing is with that one is it's funny already without the punchline, because it's like the fact that you'd say I brought my wife a fridge is
Sexist.
ridiculous. So it's already sexist and ridiculous.
But I've been writing these wee jokes because I make the packed lunches for both my kids, and I've been writing out wee dad jokes and putting them in with their packed lunches. I didn't think my daughter would like it because she's 15, but she did. She said she did like it, so I've been doing it for her and my son. So that's where I'm getting all these terrible jokes from.
Right. Well, I don't know what to say. So you actually writing Christmas cracker jokes, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. On. Yeah. Christmas cracker jokes, well, terrible.
I'm looking forward to seeing more, to hearing more. The next episode. Oh, the next episode that we're going to record is actually a very important guest, isn't it? It's
one of the best. Don't think
we'll mention the name yet, shall we? Let's leave that.
Well, we'll leave it in case he doesn't.
In case he doesn't turn up. Yeah. But yeah. So we're excited. We've got someone big coming up next time. So watch this space, everybody, and guaranteed that historical fiction fans will be excited.
Certainly probably one of the two biggest influences in me. When I was younger.
Definitely a big name. Yeah. So be interesting. But I think that's it. You think you've got anything else we want to cover on today's Christmas?
Well, yes, actually, we forgot.
Oh,
you published a new book today.
Yes, I've got a book out today, but we're recording this a couple of weeks before the podcast is out. So by the time you hear this, the book will have been out in the shops and online for a week or two. So Forest of Foes is book number 9 of the Benicia Chronicles. And I can't even believe that I've written 9 books in the series. And I've got other books as well. I'm just on the editing phase of the 3rd one of my other series as well. So I can't believe that I've written so many books. That
is quite a lot, a dozen books. And you started after me. So when was your first one published?
I self-published the first one in 2015.
Right. So in 7 years, you've written a dozen novels.
13 novels. So I'm finishing the 13th one now. But and only one novella, though. I think that's my secret. I think if you took all of your novellas and short stories, you'd add that's another novel there, easy. Whereas I've only done one novella. Actually, I've written 2 novellas, but I only published one novella. The other one's my dabbling into 19th century, but that's a whole nother kettle of fish. Anyway, so I've got Forest of Foes out. So you've got Pedlar's Promise that's just come out recently.
Yeah, we both got our stories out, and I've got another. Here she is again.
Oh, he's having a good sniff of the microphone.
What a naughty girl you are.
He's not talking to me, by the way. Anybody is talking to his dog.
No, I would probably have edited that out. Probably.
So, that's it. I think that's it for today's episode. Before we go, of course, though, before we finish, we must say Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, one and all.
Merry Christmas, one and all, and enjoy all of your festivities. We will continue sending, recording, hopefully super interesting podcasts, over the new year and into next year and beyond.
And if you have any ideas for guests that you would like to hear on it, please let us know, or episode ideas that you would like us to discuss about writing or whatever. Let us know.
Yeah, do so. And we've already got a few suggestions on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/rockpaperswordspodcast. I need to actually compile those. We put a post up there a while ago, and people put down some suggestions. So if you've got any suggestions, drop us a message or post to the Facebook page, or go on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @rock_swords.
Oh, and you can find out more about our books on MatthewHarvey.com and StephenAMackay.com.
The theme music is written and performed, copyrighted by us. So until next time on Rock, Paper, Swords, it's Merry Christmas from me, Matthew Harvey.
And it's Merry Christmas from me, Stephen A. Mackay.
And remember, whatever action and adventure and crackers and turkey you have going on in your life, be kind.
Stay safe.
And happy reading.
And remember Tiny Tim.